Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's Safety and Health webcast, Achieving Your 2021 Safety Goals Using Mass Notification, sponsored by SingleWire Software. My name is Kevin Drewley. I'm an associate editor with Safety and Health magazine, and I will be moderating today's session. Thanks for joining us. We hope you all are safe and well amid the COVID-19 pandemic. In a few minutes, we'll start the presentation, but first I want to go over some preliminary items. The views of today's speakers and organizations are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the National Safety Council or Safety and Health magazine. Any mention of a commercial enterprise, product, or publication does not mean the council or magazine endorses those items. At the end of today's webcast, we will conduct a question and answer session. To ask a question, simply click the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, type your question, and click the send button. Feel free to ask your question at any time during the presentation. You don't have to wait for the question and answer session to begin. We'll try to answer as many questions as possible, but because of the large number of participants today, we might not get to every question. Any unanswered questions will be forwarded along to today's speakers. In addition, our presenters will be making slides of today's presentation available for download. At the end of the webcast, you'll be asked to complete a brief evaluation survey that will appear on a separate screen. We will let you know more about that after the presentation. This webcast is archived, so you can access it after today's live event. To view this webcast and all of our past webcasts, go to safetyandhealthmagazine.com/events. You may also receive a link in a post-event email. With that, let's go ahead and get started. Our speakers today are Pat Shekel and Aaron McGee. Pat is Executive Vice President of Product Management at SingleWire Software and a leading developer of mass notification solutions. He brings more than 15 years of experience in helping organizations across a wide spectrum of industries with implementing tools that enhance safety and communication, and is keenly aware of the challenges organizations face when trying to keep people safe and informed. Pat and his team are committed to ensuring every organization can reach their people with important safety updates everywhere, every time. Aaron is safety manager at Outokumpu and brings 18 years of experience as an EHS expert, including 15 years in the oil and gas industry in Southeast Asia and South America before transitioning to the steel industry. Again, we thank you all for being here today. Pat, whenever you're ready, go ahead and take it away.
Thank you, Kevin. So just a little bit about us, your sponsor, SingleWire Software. We are based in Madison, Wisconsin, where we have weather like Texas's weather, at least this week. And we have about 120 people now on staff. We have about 7,000 customers around the world in nearly 90 countries. We've been at this quite a while. SingleWire has been around since 2009. And we've won a number of awards really for taking a different approach to mass notification. And there's a few distinctions here between what we're doing and what the bulk of the industry is doing. Most of the industry is very focused on reaching people on mobile phones, and we do that. And you're going to hear about that from Aaron here in a minute, because that's really the crux of what they're doing. But in addition to reaching people on mobile phones, we can reach people on on-premises devices at the same time. So sending text, audio, images to on-premises devices, things that are on your network, like your desk phones, broadcasting to them, not calling them, because it gets there far faster and you don't have to pick up the phone. It just turns every phone into an emergency notification speaker. Same thing with computer desktops, popping up to the front of your windows, playing audio out the speakers, and then going to all the other things as well. But it's that intrusiveness of streaming audio that really grabs people's attention. Of course, life safety industry figured this out quite a while ago, and that's why every fire alarm has both blaring audio as well as a flashing indicator. And in many jurisdictions, with the advancement of more recent NFPA regulations, you're seeing or the code, you're seeing it move more towards spoken audio, which is a big part of what we do, either recorded or live spoken audio, streaming out on a lot of devices. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about our product today. That's really it. I encourage you to go to SingleWire.com/demo, and you can see all of this come to life, where we give a demonstration inside one of our demo rooms. And to that end, if you would like, we'll give you a live demonstration of the product. I have two quick customer scenarios now that I'm going to talk about, actual cases that came to be and how they dealt with these problems using mass notification, before we get to Aaron, who's going to tell you about his own experience. So this was a large hospital system in the upper Midwest. They had a situation where a troubled young man drove to their property, parked the car in the parking lot, and then they thought they had an active shooter event. It turned out it was still a tragic event, but it wasn't an active shooter. It turns out the young man took his own life with a gunshot. Safety was alerted about this, and they sent out an alert to all of their people, 30,000 staff. This is before they had Informacast. A lot of people didn't receive the message. And because of that, there was a post-mortem, an after-action review and survey that was done. People wanted to understand, how did people want to be notified? So what we did this first time didn't work. What would you like to do next time? And the results were really interesting. People came back and said they wanted to be notified based on whatever they happened to be doing at the time of the incident. So if they were walking in between two buildings in the Skyway, they said, I want that speaker in the overhead to tell me something's happening. If they were off campus and maybe driving in, they said, I want to be notified via an SMS text message. If they were at their desk, they said, I want a pop-up that notifies me, and so on. So really interesting. People selected all these different communication methods or modalities, but the key takeaway is you don't know where you're going to be the next time something like this happens. And it really just underscores the need to have a multimodal system of notification. Now we're moving on to an SEC university example. And I've always had a problem with this particular slide because the graphic showed people in winter gear, and the SEC, of course, never has that sort of weather again until this week. So I guess maybe we're to blame for that. But in this case, they had a situation where there was a gunman in the campus area, unrelated to the campus. It was in the community, but that gunman ran through the university property, and so they wanted to send out an alert. And while they had done drills in the past, they hadn't really had this sort of full-scale alert where they need to send to so many people at once, and on all these different, again, communication methods. And when they did that, they learned that it took them 10 to 12 minutes to fully get the message out, because they would log into one system and send it. So into email, update the university webpage, send it out to Twitter, send it out to the giant voice outdoor speakers that notified the common areas, the outdoor areas, and so on. And because they had these different systems, they were logging in, creating the text, the content, and then sending times 6 to 8. And it took 10 to 12 minutes to get that all the way out to all those different methods. And they realized that's a big issue, because by that time the gunman had already run all the way through campus and was into another part of the community and was no longer a threat. So what they did then is they tied it all together using Informacast to send one message to all of these different modalities. And they now have it down to, it says 2 minutes here, they're now down to less than a minute for it to be reached by all of those different modalities. So that's just a little bit of background on us, your sponsor, SingleWire, and our platform, Informacast. But now I'd like to introduce Aaron McGee. I'm just going to pause for a second. I know we were looking at doing a poll question. So let's launch our first poll right now. This is a real simple one here. You'll see it pop up on your screen. Have you had an incident in the past year where you have had to invoke your business continuity or critical event plan? So for many of you, that may have been the pandemic. For others, you may have had something else where you had to invoke that plan. But this is something that, ultimately, when you're looking at mass notification, a lot of it has to do with business continuity. It has to do with responding to critical events. And that's really what we're trying to get at here. So we'll see. The results popped up. We have 43% saying yes, they have had an incident in the past year where they've had to invoke their business continuity or critical event plan. And 57% say no. So roughly evenly split. Thank you for that. We'll have one more poll question a little later. So now we're going to talk to Aaron, and Aaron is the safety manager at Outokumpu. And Aaron, I got to admit, I had not heard of Outokumpu before you became a customer of SingleWire. And anytime I look at that company name, I think of Giannis Antetokounmpo, who is the Greek freak, the center for the Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, Aaron.
So once again, my name is Aaron McGee. I am the safety manager here at Outokupu Stainless Steel in Calvert, Alabama, which is about 45 minutes outside of Mobile, Alabama. I've been here at this facility coming up on 3 years. My background is that of oil and gas before coming into the steel industry. And it's been a really good experience with the switch over in making stainless steel. We supply different companies with either coil stainless steel or with plate stainless steel, anything from your stainless steel sinks, washing machines, refrigerators, parts that might go in automobile vehicles, parts that might go into a microwave, something that might go into a toaster. So we supply all different distributors with the raw material that they take and press and make the different items that you all buy.
Well, that's fantastic. Looking at that plant floor, it looks amazing. And I think, when you're talking to people and you think about the products or the business that they're in, stainless steel, I think, is something that I don't know anyone who doesn't like stainless steel, put it that way. I mean, this stuff is just an incredibly clean, powerful look to it. And I think it's really cool what you guys are doing there.
Yeah, I think the only time that people don't like it is when you get it in your house and you're trying to clean it and you can't find the correct thing to use to get it clean, to get the fingerprints away.
The fingerprints, right? Yeah, I guess I hadn't thought of that. So. All right, good. Well, yeah. During the introduction that Kevin gave a little bit of your background when you and I had talked earlier. I was not fully aware of that. Just you worked around the world. It sounds like Southeast Asia and South America when you were in oil and gas, and yeah.
Yeah, so Southeast Asia, South America, mostly in Singapore, India, Malaysia, a little bit in the Philippines, Pakistan, different areas in oil and gas. And I think this is one of the things SingleWire, where oil and gas is at now, especially in the office setting, will be a great tool for them. And I've still have friends who work in oil and gas, and I've told them about it and said, hey man, this would be really good for you.
Yeah, we do certainly have customers in oil and gas and energy in general, and they tend to have very high notification needs. Just the idea that you have people that are spread across a wide geographic area. We saw a big uptick after some of the hurricane activity in Texas and the Gulf Coast for that very reason, because ultimately a number of our customers come to us after there's an event and they realize that their communications weren't as tight as they would have liked, and that's what happened in that case. They had the hurricane which spun off tornadoes, which caused all sorts of problems, and that generated a bit of activity there. So tell us a little bit about your role at the company. You're safety manager, as I understand it. What all does a day entail for you?
Well, the day entail is that we have over 1,100 employees on site. So a nice sized facility. We share this facility with another company who does the carbon steel side of things. And what it tells is that just basically being out on the floor, talking with people, seeing what's going on, what we can do to make things better. And this is how SingleWire came about, just communicating with different people out on the floor from the standpoint of trying to get information out, letting people know what's going on, letting team members know how they could do certain things. And it's when you're talking about 1,100 people and trying to cover the full site, talking with people, that's a lot of ground to cover. So it's a whole lot better to use SingleWire to send those that communication out in the process of holding those communications every day.
Gotcha. So what is top of mind for you today? Not necessarily related to mass notification, but just like, what are the 2 or 3 things that are, at the top of your work list for this week?
Well, one of the biggest things is everybody know you've been dealing with COVID, but one of the other things is that we've been dealing with is emotional impairment, because this has been a toll on a lot of people. The COVID related things, debating between whether to get the vaccine or not. So we're just going around this week, holding those one-on-one meetings with team members, and just kind of checking to see, what that emotional state is. If you're impaired, because people have, we say outside of the gate, the fence line, have a lot of things going on that you never know that might be taking place, but making it personal and talking to them to see where they're at and making sure everybody's okay.
Yeah, I think that's more important than ever. Obviously, we've been dealing now with the pandemic for nearly a year in terms of, not being in the office every day, not being locked down. I'm here today, but we're still very much a skeleton crew as far as coming to the office. Most of our people work from home, and depending on the industry, that's the case for a lot of organizations. Certainly not for yours. People have to be there to operate the plant floor. But we do see varying levels, and obviously it depends, on the geography that you're in terms of what the governmental mandates are, and as well as, with the level of the virus and so forth. But I think what you're talking about in terms of checking in with people and making sure that they're okay is really important, because we've been at this for a while, and for even as vaccinations are ramping up, it's going to be a while before things are 100% back to normal.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, that's good. So tell us a little bit about your mass notification journey. When did you implement InformaCast? Did it replace something else? That sort of thing.
Okay, so we've had InformaCast coming up on 2 years now. And what happened was that we really did not have a way to get communications out if we had something, an incident might have happened at the facility and we had to shut the facility down. If due to weather-related things, everything was by email, or we was relying on the team lead or the supervisor for different areas to text, or either try to call their employees and let them know what was going on. And what happened is that we had a snowstorm. Roads was froze over right at 3 years ago, and at that time, people didn't know whether the plant was open, whether it was closed, having to call. So we had no communications to get it out there. Everyone has a work email, but a lot of people, but if you're not in a certain position, your work email doesn't go to your personal phone. So it was a huge headache that we didn't have a way to make sure our people were safe, not to get on the roads, not to travel. Either trees are down, power lines are down. We couldn't let them notify, because where we're actually located at is outside of the city limits, pretty much, and it is in a rural area. So therefore, people have to travel anywhere from 45 minutes up to 2 hours to actually get to the facility. So if someone has traveled 2 hours and they get to the front gate and the gates are closed, now they're looking at having to turn around and go back home. So that was one of the main reasons that we really needed to find something that would protect our people and have them, not getting on the roads when it wasn't safe.
Yeah, it's really interesting, and people talked about people have different events. The two case studies before we started talking are, organization had an event. They may have had something in place, but it wasn't up to meeting the demands of the situation. And it sounds like that's what you experienced as well. So you talked about weather. What are some of your other main notification use cases? How are you using mass notification to be more resilient?
Well, one of the things that we're doing is that lately here, we do a lot of shipping out using rail car. And sometimes what happens is that the trains will shut down. So we have to notify employees. When you're talking about 600 people per day that's coming through our gates, and we sit on the other side of the railroad track. People are coming, trying to leave, trying to get to work. So we use it to send out a notification to take the alternate route, that we open up another gate for everyone to be able to come through. Because what happens is that, and not only that, but it gives us the opportunity to notify other people to say, hey, our contractors also, and listen, this area is shut down. You can't come this way. We don't want you to, be blocked by the train. And we can pretty much let them know when this area is going to open back up, or the railway, the rail track is going to be open.
Yeah, that sounds like a really nice service, frankly. Like, you don't want to be in your car heading to the wrong exit and then get blocked by a train and kind of get stuck there and not be able to get out. So that,
correct.
not an emergency necessarily, but mass notification is about both emergencies and about just day-to-day events and
Correct.
workflow and that sort of thing. So it's really nice you're able to do that for your workforce and give them a heads up as to what's going on. Are there any others? Whether this rerouting of the train, talked a little bit about letting them know where to report. When we talked earlier. And maybe some COVID related notifications that you're doing as well.
Yes, we've used it to send out COVID notifications as reminders, just by text, by phone call, email, letting them know, hey, here's what we're doing, washing your hands. Sometimes we just send it out over the weekend when people are off, just as a reminder to say, hey, as you're out, make sure you're putting your mask on, you're washing your hands, you're using your hand sanitizer. And also to notify when we're doing different events. We might have something that comes up overnight and we say, hey, the mill is going to be opening up a little bit later today. So just to notify people that way, once again, you're not driving and then you're going to be waiting to get in. So it has been a big help in regards to when you're talking about 1,100 people, either you're trying to rely on the manager to call them, text them, you're trying to send an email out and you had nobody, but now as we get new employees that come in, we show them how to download it to their phones. So that way, they're in there from the very beginning, and that way nobody misses out. And you have to encourage everyone to put it to their phone, so that way they don't miss out on communications that we're sending out.
Yeah, I want to follow up on that last point because that's something that we hear from prospects, from customers. And it's a discussion topic in the industry in general, is driving up the number of people that are opting in, if in fact you have opt in. I mean, of course, you do have the ability to tie into a directory, whatever your source of truth is, and that can synchronize automatically. But that's only going to be as good as the contact information that the person, in this case, the employee, is giving you.
Right.
So if they get a new cell phone, if they have two cell phones, if they have a secondary number of any kind, and if anything changes, they have to tell you that. And I'm just wondering how you manage that. How do you increase that opt-in rate and getting good information?
Well, one of the things is that when we first, everyone comes in, we ask them to say, hey, make sure the number that you give us is your emergency contact number. So that way we can, we have the same number, because you might have like you said, two cell phones. What number is their emergency contact number, so that we can put that number into the system. So when we send the mass communication out, it goes to that phone. We also, at every safety meeting that we hold, at our team meetings that we hold, we're steadily telling the team members, hey, you really need to opt in so that everybody gets the message at the same time. Because one thing that I forgot to say was that before we had this, had the SingleWire system, we had multiple messages going out, and none of the messages were alike. So you could have one person telling one person, and then by the time they got to the fifth person, it was something totally different from the original message. So this cut out on all of the confusion and wrong communication, wrong message that was going. And they say, everybody, 1,100 people getting the same message at the same time. So that way it was no more confusion. Everybody knew when to come in. Everybody know, hey, what time we're going to open back up. Everybody knew if we saying, hey, we're going to be watching the weather. We're going to keep you updated. Because it used to be that we had a weather line that the team members would have to call into to get information on, hey, the mill is doing this, that, and the other. But now with SingleWire, we just send it out, and then we say, hey, we're going to send another reminder out, another update out at this particular time, and then we can send that out also.
Yeah, so you're doing a push of information as opposed to requiring them to pull it, which is just going to be vastly different in terms of the percentage of people that actually understand what's happening. I like how you described the game we used to play as kids. We just call it telephone, right? Which, although my kids, if I said that, they probably wouldn't have any idea what that means now. They'd be like, I mean, I'm staring at a screen in my hand, but back in the when we were kids, you would play it. Even like, I remember in school one time, we you whispered in the ear of the person next to you, they turn and do the same, and it would wind its way all the way through the classroom, and you would see what it sounded like when it got to the end.
Yeah.
And sometimes it would be vaguely familiar, but ultimately I went to school with some pranksters, and so it would turn out to be something just insane that had to do with the teacher, and was unrepeatable. So in any case, whether someone's trying to deliberately sabotage your communications by playing telephone, or it's just human nature and people hear things and then repeat it incorrectly, it's obviously no way to conduct good business communications. So blasting it out to everybody and making sure that they receive the official line is important.
Because when you're talking about a minimum of 10 different departments, so that's 10 different people that was making that phone call or sending that email. And even though one might have come out from our communications department, the way they took it, changed it up, broke it down, this, that, and the other that went out, it was totally different by the time all of the team members got the message. So with this right here, we have no confusion. We have 3 people who can send the message out. And that's the way that we do that. And everybody enjoys it. It's like, hey, now we all got the same information.
I'm curious how you deal with contractors, guests, that sort of thing. People who aren't permanently on your payroll, your employees, but may come and work there for a day, a week, what have you. How are you having them enroll in the system, or are they not today?
We haven't had them to enroll in our system. We rely on that message that goes out to the person who they're actually working with within our company, and they will relay that message over to them.
Okay, that's something that we hear quite a bit of, and there are a couple of ways of doing it. So we hear people wanting to do that, even for like guests. Like I'm at the facility for a meeting, I might be there for 90 minutes. They will put out a placard that says text #alert to this number, and then they're enrolled in what's called a campaign, and they're there, which can be as little as a day.
Okay.
So that's something we do see some folks doing. I was just curious what you were up to there. And then the self-enrollment, self-registration is something that that became increasingly important because more and more organizations have some level of transient workforce.
And I would just say this to everyone, is that it's very important, from your new hires that you're bringing in to employees who you have that have been there for years, to make sure that they understand why we're doing this. It's not about, hey, we're trying to get control of your phone or anything like that, because we had those questions coming up. Hey, I don't want to put that app on. That's just a way for IT. No, this is not through IT. We had to hold that. Once we did that explanation and told everybody, the purpose behind it, our numbers started going up of everyone enrolled.
Yeah, you bring up a good point. That's one of the reasons that people seem to be a little more comfortable with SMS than they are with an app. And we have an app just like everybody else does, right? You can install it on an iPhone or on an Android phone, and it will send push notifications to that phone. And it's actually a better experience, in the sense that it gives you not just the text or the message, but you can include an image, you can include audio and press play and listen to the audio message. Whereas when you're sending a text, you only get the text. On both of them, you can have message confirmation, so there's no difference there. But we see a lot more people still using SMS and not using the push notifications to the app, probably for that reason. Like they just, compelling people to install an app that they associate with work. They're like, hold on, what are you going to be doing with that? There's a certain hesitancy to that. So I can certainly understand what you're saying there.
Yeah, because we had to tell them, hey, the app is free. It's not going to cost you anything. It's not any extra money on your telephone bill monthly. This is taken care of by the company. So, it was a lot that we had to go through to get everyone to get on board. But now it's like clockwork. As they come in, we tell them about it. They sign up, they get on, and we're doing really good.
That's good. That's really good to hear. Did you have any challenges in the rollout of the project? You said, the incident happened roughly 3 years ago. You've been running Informant Cast for a little over 2. Did you have any challenges getting off the ground, and how'd you deal with those?
Well, the only challenge was convincing everyone of the app, and we actually, brought people in, did a test run, saying, "Hey, this is a test," and just showing them, "Hey, here's what you're going to get, here's what you're going to hear, this is what you're going to see." And as we took our time just talking to everyone and explaining and showing it to them, the apprehension went away and they started to sign up. It was just that really for the first year, it was really hard getting people to sign up because they didn't want to. They was like, "Oh, we don't need that." And then as we started to convince them more and more, we started holding meetings, and we would go in and we would just get 30, 35 people at a time before the pandemic, where we could have that many people in a room and get them, show them phone by phone, how to put the app on their phone, giving the information to Miss Ellen, who's our administrator, to put everything into the system and everybody. And that was the way that we did it. We just did it. We did it group by group.
Yeah, that's smart. The other thing too about, I should mention for those who are thinking about, because you're talking a lot about the app, right? And I think, again, the app is a better experience if we could just convince everyone to use it. But the other thing you get with the app is if you're in a plant environment like this and you're not in good cell range, right? As long as that phone can get a data connection, it could be over Wi-Fi, could be over cellular, you're going to get the message, right? Whereas with SMS, you got one way, you've got cellular. If you're in an area where cellular coverage isn't good, but Wi-Fi is, you're not going to get the SMS text message, whereas you would get that message using the app.
And that's one of the things is that we have team members who live in real rural areas that was, sometimes they couldn't get a call in because where they lived at, they didn't have internet service, so they wasn't getting the emails that we were sending out. But with the SingleWire, and once they put these apps to their phones, they was getting these messages, and then they was able to contact, say, hey, other people who lived in that area, and giving them the same message or forwarding that message on to them if they didn't have it already. So that was another reason our numbers started to go up, because we would have one person who had it, they was in an area where other people didn't have it, they would come back and say, hey, I really need to get this added onto my phone.
Oh yeah. So kind of word of mouth.
Yes.
Yeah. That's interesting. So what do you plan on doing next when it comes to mass notification and disaster recovery and so forth?
We're looking at several different things to see how we can get this tied into. We have what we call communication boards around our facility, which are like TVs, trying to get it tied into that. It's not really tied to a speaker system, but it can actually go to that TV that are all around the mill that people walk by and they see all the time, and having it where it goes up there in a flash. Looking at the notifications going to the laptops or the desktops that people have, whether they're at home working, as long as they're connected to our Wi-Fi, to our system, having it to pop up on their desktop so they can see it and know what's going on. That's the next steps that we're taking, because we're really pushing to get to 100% with our team members on having the apps on their phones. And then the next steps will be what I was just talking about.
That's interesting. So we're going to do a couple things here. I'm going to ask you one more question, and then we're going to have a poll question, and then we're going to take Q&A from the audience. I've seen a number of questions come in here as we've been talking. So the last question I have for you is just, what advice do you have for someone who's looking at either implementing mass notification for the first time or making a change to what they're doing today?
The one thing that I would say from the safety side is that when you're really looking out for your team members, it is one of the best systems that you could get. You really wouldn't, with trees being down and the way that we've used this in this area that we're in, it would be really hard for me to go and see someone's family because we didn't get the message out to them in regards to something was in the road, coming to work, the plant was shut down, they was traveling back. But by doing this and having this mass communication, we don't miss out on getting the message out, getting the right message out, not by hearsay, but by what is actually going on and getting it to them. So I would encourage everyone, if you're looking to get a mass communication system, this is the way to go.
Yeah, that's good advice. So let's do we have one more poll question. Let's launch that, and we'll take a look at that. And here we go. In what area has the pandemic most changed your approach to physical security planning? Remote worker communication is more important. Tracking access within facilities for contact tracing. Additional access controls to mitigate the movement of people. Or no change. So we'll wait for a few seconds for everyone to get your answer in on that. And then, like I said, the next thing after we discuss the results here a little bit, the next thing that we'll do is we'll take Q&A. So go ahead and enter any questions you have in there, and we'll go ahead and we'll try to get to all of those. So here are the results. So 53% said that, again, I'll just reread the question. What area has the pandemic most changed your approach to physical security planning? Remote worker communication is more important. That's not a surprise. I mean, like I said, here at SingleWire, we have one physical location, it's in Madison, Wisconsin, and we have maybe 15 or 20 people showing up here every day, so very spread out. And so keeping in touch with the people that are not in the building is much more important than ever. But a pretty even distribution here across the next two, contact tracing and then additional access controls to mitigate the movement of people. So, interesting how people are dealing with that too. So I'm going to go ahead and close that out, and then we'll get to the questions here. And I can go ahead and read these, and unless Kevin, you wanted to take them and feed them too. I think you were gonna give those to us, Kevin, if you're ready.
If that's okay. No, I know you've been comfortable with that with Aaron, but whatever you prefer, I'm happy to.
Yeah, go ahead. Why don't you read them off,
right.
and we'll take them as best we can.
All right. Well, sounds great. No, great job to you both, and we thank you for your insights and expertise. As Pat mentions, we are going to launch into the Q&A here in a moment. Before we do so, just want to remind everyone of the evaluation survey that we're going to be asking you to complete. The survey will open on a different screen after this presentation, and we really do appreciate your input because it'll help us improve future webcasts. So we, again, do appreciate you taking that extra time to offer feedback. We are seeing some questions coming in, and once more, if you'd like to ask a question, you just simply click the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, type your question, and then click the send button. So with that, let's get going with some questions. First one, what are some common mistakes organizations make when building their business continuity plan?
Aaron, you want to take a first go at that, given you're the safety manager?
I sure will. Well, one of the biggest problems is not getting everybody involved when you're building the plan. A lot of times we can get not everyone, as far as our management team, team leads, team members, involved in what we need to do and how we need to go about doing it. And that's one of the biggest things, is just making sure you get everybody involved that needs to be involved, and it will work out really good.
Next one, what do you see as the biggest challenges for organizations sharing emergency communications in the midst of the pandemic?
Well, I would say one of the biggest things is that a lot of times what we've experienced, we have on Highway 43 where we're located at, there's about 10 to 12 different facilities along here, anything from stainless steel, chemical companies, so forth, so on. Before the pandemic, there was never any calls in between the different companies to share information. Since the pandemic started, we do a monthly call just to talk about, hey, what are you doing in regards to if there's a different product that you might be using that's going to help you, from hand sanitizer to antibacterial soaps that you're using. So this pandemic has really pulled us together and made us hold conversations that we weren't holding in the past. And it's really working out for the good for everybody.
Kind of continuing on that same vein, what do you think the threat landscape might look like in another year or two?
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry.
what do you think the threat landscape might look like in another year or two?
I really hope that we're back to normal and not the new normal within the next year or two. And with that, I hope that these meetings that we're holding will stay the same. That we're still, sharing information, and that we're not holding back any information that might help someone else.
Yeah, I'll jump on that real quick. I think that certainly we expect that a year or two from now, the pandemic to have subsided largely, if not entirely. So there will always be some, life will have changed somewhat. But we also expect that, you're seeing some trends covered in Safety and Health and other places, as far as domestic terrorism, workplace violence, and things like that. So those are the things that we're kind of keeping an eye on. And obviously we hope that we don't have any of that, but you can kind of see some of those trends that have developed over the past couple of years. And if you listen to the FBI warnings and that sort of thing, as far as what they're forecasting, we see some of that likely to increase.
Next question says, mass notification companies have not placed much focus on construction companies when it comes to transient workers. What is being done to address contractors that are temporary or work on several different sites at different intervals?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We talked a little bit about that when I asked Aaron about his contractors or guests or that sort of thing. The idea that you can give people a very easy way to sign up, whether that's a QR code or telling them the text, hashtag with a word. We often use hashtag alert to a certain number, and that subscribes them to a temporary campaign. There are a number of ways to handle that. Self-registration, where you email a link out and that sort of thing. So there's a number of different ways to do that. And that's really important. There's a lot of, whether you're talking about manufacturing or construction, education, healthcare, all of those have a relatively high percentage of transient population, whether that's transient workers in the form of contractors or parents, guests, patients, students, that sort of thing.
Next one asks, do you have an after-hour system for if a fire or ammonia alarms would go off, that someone could call us or an alert could go out and let us know something is happening? And then the second part asks, can you create different groups, such as an emergency response team that only gets notified of after-hour items?
Well, the short answer is yes. We do have the capability to do both of those. The ammonia sensor one is interesting. Obviously, ammonia is really bad if you breathe it. We have an ice cream manufacturer. Being from Wisconsin, I have to tell at least one dairy-related story. It's mandatory. There's an ice cream manufacturer that uses ammonia to kill the listeria bacteria at low temperatures, and they have the ammonia sensors tied into Informacast. So if that happens, if the ammonia concentration in the air gets too high, they send out an alert. It used to be just a localized alarm in the area. And that was fine until someone on a forklift went driving through the ammonia cloud. Now they've got a workers' comp claim, they're having trouble breathing, et cetera. So they tied it in so it sends a plant-wide notice, just letting people know what area that ammonia sensor went off in. The plant is 7 football fields in size. And that, that's very helpful. And then the other question was about grouping and reaching people that way. And when we look at setting up a customer and we take you through our discovery workbook, it's all about what behavior are you trying to get people to take? And that's ultimately why you're sending a notification, is you want people to do something. And so it's who's allowed to send the message, what are they sending, to what people are they sending it, and what do you want to have happen after the fact? Those are kind of the main things that we look at. And as it relates to grouping, if it's something like some of the instances Aaron was talking about with severe weather, you're going to send it to everyone who works at the plant. But if it's something smaller, like the ammonia sensor example that was asked about, you're not going to send that to the whole plant sometimes, especially if it's an after hours alert. You want that to go just to maybe an engineering team or maybe to a safety team. And then what happens after that, how you deal with that incident management is up to you, but we give you a few tools that you can deal with. One is you can automatically have a conference call go out. So you wouldn't use that for the whole company. You would use that just for the safety team, let's say. Call up 20 people, and they would rotate through a handful of numbers on each of them until it brings them in. Now you're all together on a conference call. That's kind of the old school way of doing it, frankly, because the two newer ways of doing it are using collaboration tools, either sending that message into and creating a meeting in Microsoft Teams or in Cisco WebEx. So those are the other ways that we see people doing it. But either way, you're looking at being very tailored with where that message is going.
All right. Next one sort of brings up a scenario involving this idea of the information overload that's just everywhere we go, and just sort of is looking for some feedback on how do you sort of navigate and judge when you have to decide what's pertinent info that needs to be sent to certain people or to blast it out to everyone.
Yeah, I'd like Aaron to take a swing at that. Yeah,
okay.
Go ahead.
So one of the things that we do, we have a panel, a four-person panel, and that's the safety director, that is myself, that is Ms. Ellen, who's our administrator, and the operations director. And we get together and we say, okay, we need to send this message out to the whole company once the decision has been made that something needs to go out. So we have a panel that actually says, okay, we need to distribute this information. And we also need to say, no, this doesn't need to go out. We can just pretty much call these certain people and let them know what's going on. Or, as you say, to that smaller group of people who need to be notified.
Next one asks, did you have to offer any incentives to get employees to opt in our emergency messages separated from other more routine messages such as traffic, et cetera?
No, we didn't have to offer any incentives for them to opt in. We just, really just talked about it and told them the benefits of having it. And that was really it there. And as far as the messages, we can separate them in regards to this is the emergency message, and that's all in the message that goes out. That with the alert and what you put in there, and there know that, hey, we're going to be watching the weather. We'll give you an update, or hey, this is the emergency message that we're sending out. So it's all in regards to the wording that you use.
Next one asks, what are the minimum requirements for mass communication for the manufacturing industry?
That is a good question. I'm not sure if there is a minimum requirement for mass communication. We didn't have one at all before we actually had InformaCast. Our mass communication consisted of trying to call them on their cell phone, send a text, or send out an email. And that was a good question there. I would really have to look that one up.
Can the system notify a radius of devices based on latitude and longitude? For example, say, can you look for devices that are within a 5-mile radius from my location?
Yeah, it's a good question, and the answer is unfortunately it depends. So there are geolocation services in the system inside of InformaCast, and it depends on what we're talking about. So there is iPause functionality. So if you're an authorized iPause sender, which would typically be like a county emergency management agency or the equivalent, then you can simply draw that polygon, and then you have the ability to send out wide area emergency alerts. That's one way. The other way is if you're using the app, because if we're sending to SMS, we don't know where that's located, and neither does anybody else for that matter. SMS isn't location dependent. But if you're using the app that runs on iOS or Android, as we were talking about with Aaron earlier, we do have the ability to send to a polygon because that app is using the location services. So we're not mapping where you are. So to address the earlier question of where some employees might be concerned that their employer can track them, but you can draw a polygon and you can set it up in one of two ways, either exclusive or inclusive. So you can say, everyone who's in this area, I want you to receive this message. Or you can say, when someone enters the area, they get the message. So there's a few different ways of doing it. That piece of functionality, that feature, is called an area of interest. And you can assign an area of interest to go into a message template. So for example, if you're sending one type of message, you might not care about where they're located, whereas with another you might, and you can differentiate based on that.
All right. Well, we still have several questions, but just a reminder, anyone, if you do have a question you'd like to ask of Pat or Aaron, simply click the Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, type your question, and click the send button. Next one now is asking, do you have concerns about overusing the system, maybe sending too many communications to workers?
No, not at all. That's one of the reasons that we have our panel that we put together and we discuss before we send anything out, so that we do not overload, because just like anything else, it goes off, they look at it, and it's like, oh, it's just another message from SingleWire. That's not what we want. So we kind of limited what we're actually sending out and talk about it before we send it out.
What is the cost of the program? Is it a one-time cost or an annual fee?
It's an annual subscription based on the number of users that you have. And we have full transparency on our pricing. If you go to singlewire.com/pricing, you can find the pricing there.
Next one, do you include people out of the organization in your system?
Yes. So we address this to a certain extent. We talked about the transient population, visitors, contractors, guests, patients, that sort of thing. You do have the ability to add them in, either have them self-register or use a user loader process to add them in bulk.
This one's coming from a fellow Wisconsinite, Pat. They denote that in the phrasing.
Okay.
They ask, how specific could the, they're following up on the earlier ammonia question, but asking how specific could the alerting system be for after-hour alerts? For example, if our alarm is going off in an engine room A, would it be able to tell us that exactly what our system is? Would it be able to tell us exactly what the system is alerting, or would it just be a generic ammonia alarm? And they note that they've been doing some research on the company already and find the website rather informational.
Yeah, the answer is it depends on the integration. So if it's merely a contact closure integration, which is just the mechanical, it's either on or it's off, a door's open or closed, your doorbell, your typical doorbell, not your Ring or Nest doorbell, but your old school doorbell is a contact closure. If that's the only information we're getting, then you wouldn't get specific information from that ammonia sensor. But if it's system based, meaning it can talk to our API, or can send us a common alerting protocol feed or an email, or an RSS feed. There are a number of programmatic ways is what I'm trying to say. So if it's beyond just the mechanical and there's a programmatic way to give us that information, then we can pass that through in the payload of the message, which people do all the time for all sorts of different systems, whether it's the same thing with a fire alarm. So at the most rudimentary level, you want to know, did the fire alarm go off in my building? That's good to know, but it would be better to know, was the fire alarm, was the pull station on the east side of floor 3 pulled? That's better to know, right? So that's the sort of distinction information we're talking about. We do have the ability to receive that information. It just depends on the inbound system. Does it have the intelligence to send us that sort of information?
Next question says, you've told us all the pros, but now what are some cons? Meaning, are there any glitches that have been found where communications have been hampered either by a poor signal, power issues, etc.?
Yeah, so I'll take it real quick and then you can jump in, Aaron. No system is 100% perfect, and every system is relying on sending through other means, right? Like we rely on the carriers, just as everybody else does. If we're sending to your on-premises devices, we're relying on your own data network to get the messages to your desk phones, desktops, overhead paging system, digital signage. And there are going to be issues. Everyone has issues at some point in time, and power could be one of them if you're talking about the on-premises devices. Cell signal, as we talked about earlier, could be one. You're talking about mobile phones. And that's really why sending to lots of different communication methods is important, because you build in some method of redundancy there. So if you're only sending SMS text messages, we know based on research that's been published in the Journal of Homeland Security that on average, you're going to get about 80% of your population by doing that because of a whole litany of issues. People not opting in, bad cell coverage, et cetera. And that's why adding additional communication methods is important, because it gets you a lot closer to 100% of your desired population.
Pat, you answered it. I was along that same line.
Yeah.
All right. Well, no, we still have some time, folks, and still have some questions. But again, if anything that you still would like to ask, just click that Q&A button at the bottom of the screen, type your question, and click send. So next one, what about public service for critical alarms?
Public service for critical alarms. I'm not sure I understand exactly what that question is getting at. Do you want to take a swing at reinterpreting it, Kevin? Or
we can ask. It's Robert, if he still happens to be on. If he can, feel free to extrapolate in the Q&A. That's all that's there at the moment. So we can move now to the next one in the interim. Again, Robert, if you want to expound on that, feel free in the Q&A. Next one asks, are we limited to the number of groups or subsets that we can send alerts to per license?
No, not in any way.
I'm being informed now, Robert, I think may have logged off, not to single him out in any way. I just know that he'd be the one to expound on that. That's just, again, it just had asked, what about public service for critical alarms? So at the moment, the queue is all dried up, or no, I'm sorry. There's one license for the entire company or based on number of users.
It is user based, and like with everything, the price per user goes down as the number of users goes up. And you can go to singlewire.com/pricing, and you can see it broken down and the different tiers and how that works.
Well, you both have been quite thorough, and I know there's still some time for folks to ask, but in the interim right now, anything left unsaid, or anything else you'd like folks to know today?
I'd just like to thank everyone for their time and attention, and to just reiterate something I said at the top, which is we'd love to give you a demonstration of the software, because when you see it, you'll really understand it, bring some of these use cases to life. You can see a recorded demo at /demo, singlewire.com/demo, or let us know if you'd like to see a live a demonstration where we'll show you all of this happening in real time, and we can tailor it to talk to your specific use cases. Thank you.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I really appreciate being invited to be one of the speakers today. This has been an enjoyable time for me to share how SingleWire works for us. And if there's any questions, I'm not sure if my email is out there. Feel free to reach out to me and I can tell you more.
All right. Well, we're very good. No, thanks to you both. Unfortunately, I guess we've run out of time and run out of questions. As Aaron indicates, though, you can send anything additionally along, but all of today's questions that we've received, we appreciate you both answering them. Once again, hope that everyone takes the time to fill out the evaluation survey to provide feedback. With that, we end today's Safety and Health Magazine webcast. I'd like to thank Pat Shekel, Aaron McGee, everyone at SingleWire Software, and all of you who listened in. Thanks and have a great day.
Thank you. Have a good one.